Hello everyone, in this video we are gonna have a look at how we can design, validate and save forms in Flutter. In our example here we have a form with several fields in there, and if we start typing there you will see that the validations come up. Let's just complete the form for a moment here. You will see that we also have email validation in our form. We also have password validation and we require complex passwords for safety. So let's input a password here. And what we also have here is that the passwords need to be the same. So it's a very realistic form that we have here. There we go. And we also have a specific keyboard for our pin code, which is a numeric keyboard. So there we go. So in this video, we're going to look at how we can create this. Hope you're ready for it. Let's go. Okay, so we start off with our standard Flutter application, our counter that we always have. Let's start with cleaning up this a little bit to remove our boilerplate code. So what I will do is here, I will remove all of this here. We're going to create a new stateless widget. So let's say we want a new stateless widget. There we go. And this we are going to call my app. So that's our my app. And the next thing that we are going to do is to return a material app here. There we go. And we are also gonna get rid of our debug banner in the corner there by doing this here. And let's also apply a theme for this demo. And our primary swatch is gonna be colors dot cyan, and that's okay for now. And our home screen is gonna be a new screen which we're gonna create in a moment. That's gonna be called our forms screen. There we go. Let's save this for a moment. Let's go to our Explorer and create a new Dart file here. Alright, then we are going to import material here. We have a shortcut for that. There we go. And let's create a new stateful widget. There we go. So we have our black screen here with that's our default container, obviously. Okay, so now we have this. Let's start with creating the form. Okay, so let's start with a scaffold. There we go. And in there we are gonna have an app bar. And this app bar bum, 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 bum. There we go. This will have a title, and that's gonna say complete your profile. That's okay. So there is our app bar, and I do want to make a change here. I want to give it a color white, text style, colors white. That looks a little better now. And I also want to put a center around the text here. And I see that I have to do some other stuff here. Let's see. There we go. So now these warnings are also away. So now we have our app bar. Let's then move along to our container. That's gonna be in our body. There we go. And like this. Then we want to have our form there. There we go. And we also need to have a child, obviously, for our form. And this is gonna be a column. And the column is gonna have our input fields later on. There we go. So let's add some children to our column then. Pum, 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 pum. You know what we are first gonna do is we need to have something to identify our form later on when we want to do things with our form. And for this, we are gonna use a key, and this key is like a reference to our form. It's gonna be a global key, and we are gonna assign it here at the top. So this is gonna be a final, and let's call it a forms key. And as I said, it's gonna be a global key, and it will have form state like this. And now we are gonna add this key to our form, and we're gonna do this here. There we go. And this is gonna be our forms key. So this way we can reference our form later on when we want to do things with it. Using the global key, it's like the way that also is explained in the Google documentation for Flutter. There is a different way that you can also access your form by looking it up in your widget tree with the form of context. It's for a bit more complex examples. So for this, the forms key is good if we do it this way. All right. So the next thing that we want to do is add input fields to our form. We're going to add first name, last name, email, password, confirm password, and also a pin, and then a button, obviously. So we created our column here, and the column, it can contain multiple children. And this is going to contain our text form fields, actually. So let's start with the first text form field. Now, we also need to add a label to our text form field, otherwise we're not going to know what our field is about. So for this, we will need to use the decoration here, and this will need to have an input decoration. There we go. And with this, we can actually do a lot of stuff for our input fields. But for now, let's put a label text here. And this will contain then first name. There we go. Let's see if this works. There we go. So what I see here now is that it takes over the entire screen. And what I want to do is I want to wrap my form in the center, and then it will look a little bit better in a moment. Let's also add a margin here in our container. And for this, we need to use edge insets all, and then let's say 20 or something. There, that looks a little bit better. We're also going to add the const modifier here. And we need to do this here as well. There we go. All right, so let's move on to the next text input field, and I'm just gonna copy it here, put a comma there. This is gonna be our last name. And then we need one for the password as well, or maybe first our email address. And then we will have our password. There we go. And then we need to have our confirm password. And then we also want to have a PIN. We're going to use numeric keyboard for that later on. And then eventually I want to have a form, and this is going to be an elevated button, the on pressed. Let's just give it an empty function there. And then the child, this is going to be our text. Text, complete your profile. And I'm also gonna style this so it looks, so it's in white. Text style, colors dot white. So there we have our form. Let's add some const modifiers here to optimize the code a little bit. And I also want to have a size box between here, because I think that my button is squeezed a little bit to the top of that pin here. So size box with a height of 20 maybe. There we go. And let's put a comma here. So that looks a little better. All right. So now we have our form. All of the fields are added, and let's see if this works. Now you will see that there's an error here. It says bottom overflow by something pixels. So what happens here is that whenever you when you click on a field, the keyboard will come up, and then this will show an error because it doesn't have enough room to properly show your form. So there's a way that we can fix this, and this is by actually adding a single scroll view around our column. So let's do that. Let's wrap our column here with a widget, and this is going to be the single scroll view. There we go. And as you can see now, this will not happen anymore. The form will basically move up a little bit once the keyboard comes up. So as you can see, our warning is gone. So that's how you fix that warning. Great. So the next thing that we are going to do is make our text fields look a little bit prettier. And I want to show you some things that you can do with these text form fields. So as I said, this input decoration that we have here, it's for the label text, but you can also do some other stuff with that as well. For instance, by default, we have this underline here that you can see. You can also have like a border around the field. So you can change this by saying border, and then I think it's outline, input border. There you go. So if you do it like this, you will see that you have this border around your field here. And when you click on it, the label moves up a little bit to the top there. I'm just gonna leave it with the underlined border because I like that a little bit better in terms of look and feel. Other things that you can also do is you can have like a hint text so that people know what they need to input in the fields. If you are working with more complex forms, that can be interesting. So let's say, please fill in your first name. There we go. Let's save. So you will see that there is some text now, the hint that we actually just fill in. And if I click on the form and if you start typing, the hint will go away. All right, that's another thing that you can do. You can also put like a radius when you have around the outline border that we saw before. You can also have like the radius that you can make it more curved and stuff like that. That's other things that you can do. You can also add some icons if you want to. You can do that in the decoration here as well. So if you want like a prefix icon, for instance, you can do that. Let's say icons.person, not percent, but person. Let's do this. There we go. So now you will see that there's an icon before our text field here. You can also have a suffix icon, then the icon will be at the end there. And I think that there's also a regular icon option, and then it puts the icon in front of the field here, and it will look like this. So let's maybe take a suffix icon in this example. There we go, and then the icon will be here at the end. Let's move on to our last name field. I think I'm just gonna leave it as it is. For our email address, that's also good as it is. For our password field, we can do some extra stuff there. Let's, for instance, as you can see here, it's just a text field, so you will see the password, but when we want to hide those characters, there's also an option for that. So that is called, let me just put a comma here, then it will look a little bit better. There we go. And so here you have obscure, let's see, let's think a little bit. No, it's not in our decoration. We need to do it above the decoration. It's a property of the text form field itself. So obscure text, and you can say that you want to, so this is a bool, so you need to say I want to obscure the text that is in the text field, and then you can put a character which you want to replace the characters with in your text form field. And by default, actually, if you do it like this, there will be like, as you can see, it's like a regular password mask that you have. But you can also have your own character if you want to do that. I think there's an option obscuring character, and then you can say, like, for instance, if you want to have like small hyphens here, let's save it like this, and then you will see that there's small hyphens. Or if you want to have like small stars, asterisks, sorry, then it will look like this. We are gonna do the same with our confirm password, because it's also a password field, obviously. Let's do it like this. And then for our PIN code, we are also gonna do something else. We are gonna change the keyboard type, because you can see now here there are like letters and stuff like that. But for our PIN code, we want to just have a numeric keyboard. And so let's move to here, and then we have keyboard type here, and this wants a text input type. And here are the different keyboard types that you can choose. You have date, email address, multi-line, name, and so on. And we want to have a numeric keyboard. So there we go. So if we save this, this should change to a numeric keyboard, as you can see here. Now, what you can still do if you have this, and I'm currently sitting behind my PC, but I am able to add here letters in there still. There is a way to prevent that, and you can have input formatters, and there you can be more restrictive of what you can input in that field. You can also define like the length which is allowed and stuff like that. So let's let's add the input formatters here, and we want to have a text input formatter. There we go. And this is called filtering text input formatter. And let's see, digits only. So when you do this, it will only accept digits in that field. Now, if I click on my keyboard some letters, it's not allowed anymore. So I can only add the digits over here. Then, as we saw before with the pin code, we have this numeric keyboard here. For the password, we actually also have a specific keyboard. So let's use that here. Input, text input type, text input type. There we go. And then we have visible password here. Let's copy that as well for our password field here. There we go. So let's see how our form looks right now. I think it looks pretty well, pretty clean. That's okay. And now we want to add some validation to our forms. So whenever the person using this application is working with the form, I think it's good to give them some validation of what are required fields and what is going on. Because if we would save our form now as it is, there's no validation. You can just go ahead and save all of the data, even if it's not there. So that's not a good thing. Let's start with the validation of the first name. So let's move a little bit up to our first name here. And there is actually something called here the validator, not in our decoration. So we need to get out of there and we need to do it here. Validator. And from this we have a value. This will be the value that it's actually in the text field. And here we can say if the value is null, so if there's nothing there, or if the value is empty, then we want to give a validation and say that that the first name is required. So we're going to do return first name is required. There we go. Otherwise, return null, and that means that all is okay. So let's see if this does anything. And as you can see, there's no validation. And that's normal because we didn't give any command that validation had to happen. What we need to do is in our button on pressed over here, we need to say it's time to validate our form. Now, if you remember before, we had to create a reference to our form so we could access it further along in our key. And that's further along in our code. And that's why we have the key. So let's use our forms key and we can say current state. If that's not empty, validate it. There we go. Let's click on save. And as you can see now, there's a validation saying that the first name is required. So that's a good thing. Let's move on to our last name field. And this is actually going to be the same as our first name validation. So I'm going to be a bit lazy here and just copy paste this and say that our last name is also required. There we go. What you see now is that the validation needs to happen every time when you click on this button. There is actually a way that you can also have like an automatic validation whenever there's interaction in the form, or yeah, when you're doing these things there. So if we move to our form here, and if you start typing here, we have the auto validate mode, and this auto validate mode is actually gonna make sure that the validation happens automatically. And you can say always, or you can say on user interaction when they are typing in a field, then it will also validate on the other fields. So we can do it like this. And now let's say that I fill in my last name here. So all is good, but when I remove it again, you will see that automatically this validation comes back up, because that's because of the auto validate mode is put to auto now. Now we will need to do validation of our email address and our passwords. This is going to be a bit more complex. We're going to use a regular expression for this to check if it's an existing, well, not really an existing, but if it's a valid email address. And the next thing that we'll also do is have a check on our password. We're also going to use a regular expression for this. You know that there are multiple types of passwords that you can have. You can say like, I want to have a password with 6 characters or 8 characters. It needs to have an uppercase, lowercase, number, special character. So these are things that you can have in your app to make your app, or at least the passwords that are used in your app, more secure. So for that, we're also going to use a regular expression. I created 2 methods before. I'm just going to copy them over just to speed things up. But what I will do is I will go over the code to give some explanation. And I'm also going to make available this code so you can also have a look there. So this is our email validation. This is our regular expression. As you can see, it's a very long string here, which makes sure that it's which is a valid email address. And then we are actually gonna see if we match this regular expression, the value that is entered in our input type. And the next thing is a password validation that I created here. And you will see that I have several different variations of this regular expression here, which I found on the internet. Currently have like minimum 8 characters, at least 1 letter, 1 number, and 1 special character. But as you can see, you can be even more strict in these things. So that's that. Let's move back to our password field here. And no, first our email address. So there we are also gonna add our validator, and we get the value then from the text input field. And here we are gonna say, so if it's not a valid email, then we want to say please enter a valid email address, and otherwise no. There we go. So let's see if this works. As you can see, the validation automatically happens. Please enter a valid email address. Let's add a valid email address here and see if the regular expression works. So as you can see, this looks like a valid email, and the regular expression says it's okay, and the validation is okay, and it moves along. What we are gonna do now is the password validation, and we are gonna also add our validator here then. Okay, we take our value is valid password then with our value. Password must be 8 characters long. And this text is going to be a little long for our display, but no worries. 1 number and 1 special character. Otherwise, no. There we go. Let's see. So immediately my error comes up because the password that I put here before is not a valid password for this regular expression. And as you can see, the text falls off a little bit. I know that that's not really user-friendly, but we're not going to worry about that in a moment. I think that people will know that they need to input a little bit more complex password. So let's see if we enter here a more complex password. Our validation is okay. Now, the next one that we need to do is our confirm password. We are not going to check if the password is complex because we also already have our password validation on the password field. But what we are going to do now is confirm that the confirm password is actually the same as our other password. Now, how are we going to do that? We need to access the value of our password input field from our confirm password input field. And how are we going to do this? We are going to do this by using a text editing controller. A text editing controller makes it possible to access the value of your input type. So let's move all the way up. And underneath our forms key, we are going to add a password controller. It's going to be of type text editing controller. There we go. And then we need to add our text editing controller to our password fields. That's this one here. Controller, password controller. That looks right. And now what we will do, we will move to our confirm password here, and there we are gonna add a validator, and the value is gonna come back, and we are gonna say if the value is null, or if the value does not equal to our password controller, the text value that is in there. Then we are gonna say passwords are not equal. So what this means is we are gonna look at the value that is in our confirm password, and we are going to see if it's obviously not null. And then we are going to compare that value to the text that is in our password controller. And at the moment that you do this, you will actually have already your password here, and the text is going to be saved to that password controller. So let's input the password again. There we go. And as you can see, our validation of our confirmed password is working now, and it's saying that our passwords are not equal because we are comparing an empty value to this password that we have put here. So we are gonna add the same password here. And now you can see that our password and our confirmed password are okay. So that is one way of getting to the values of your text input fields. Another way that you can also do is, for instance, use the onChange callback. And there you can also say value. And let's just print the value that comes back in our console. Let's save that. So what will happen here is whenever I start typing here in the first name field, the value will be shown here in the console at bottom here. So let's test that. So as you can see, the complete text of your text input field is shown here in the console. So there are two ways that are typically used to access the values of your text form fields. You can use the onChanged, or you can use the controller, as we have done here with the password field. The last thing that we are going to do with our form is we are going to simulate a save. Now, what we are not going to do is we're not going to save it to a database. We'll show that maybe in a different video, but I just want to show you what is the process of saving a form, and so what it looks like and how that process works. So first of all, what we want to do is create a very small model in our application, and this model is going to contain the person data that's going to be filled into this form. So I'm going to create a new folder, and let's say models, and in this model I'm going to create a person.dart file, and this is going to contain a class person. There we go, and we're going to give it some string values saying first name, last name, email, password, PIN, and then also the constructor here. This dot first name, this dot last name, this dot email, this dot password, and this dot PIN. There we go. Then let's move back to our form screen, and then we are gonna add our model here at the top. There we go, final person, and that's gonna be a new person. There we go. So what we will need to do now is we will need to map the values of our text input fields to our class. And how are we going to do this? There's also a callback for that. And whenever you call the save function on your form, it will call this callback, and it's called onSaved, on all of the text input fields on your form. So you will need to make sure that you do something with this value in time if you call the save function. So this is again going to return a value. And what I want to do now is I want to take our person, which we created before, and say, okay, the first name is this value. And the good thing that by now we know that everything is safe, because we already had this validation process. We know that there's data in this field, and so we're absolutely sure that it can be saved to our person model over here. So let's do the same for last name. So we go here, let's put a comma there so it looks a little bit more pretty. And this is then going to be the last name, and the same for our email address. There we go. The same for our password. There we go. Confirm password is not required because we are going to save our password. Confirm password just to make sure that the person has really entered the correct password, so they have a double check. And then we also have our PIN code here. And then the final thing that we need to do is call our save function on our form. So what we do want to do though is we want to make sure that our form completely validated before we are saving this information. And before we had our validate function here, we just did a check of all of the validators that are defined on the text input fields. But as you can see, this validate also returns a bool. So whenever it's okay, whenever everything is validated, it will return true. And we want to do something with that. So if we put an if around this, like this, then we can say, now we know that everything is valid, and we can say forms key dot current state and save. And this will actually save the form. So at this point, you can do things with your forms data. What we can do is we can show an alert saying that that our form was saved. What is wrong here? Let's see. So we want to have our return, and I'm missing the colon here, I think, and then like this. There we go. And we put a const around it. There we go. So if we want to do a quick check also if everything was there, we can do also a quick debug print here. First name, all right, so let's have a look if this works. So we have our first name, our last name, we have our email address, passwords, which are okay, and then our PIN code. Click on complete your profile. As you can see, we have our alert dialog saying that our profile was completed. And then if we look to our console here, we can see that first name John, last name Smith, email, password, and our PIN. So I think that that's everything that I wanted to tell you about these forms. We looked at how we could create forms, how we could reference these forms using the global key. Then we looked at text input fields, the text form field that we used to capture the data in the form. We also looked at how we could style these forms. There are a lot of things that you can do with the decoration, so definitely have a look at the official documentation for all of the different properties that you can set. We also looked at the validators, and then eventually we looked at the saving of the form. So I hope it was informative. I hope that you liked the video. If you did, please click the like button. Also maybe subscribe to our channel. My intention is to provide a lot of informative content about Flutter. And that's it. Thank you for watching and have a nice day. Bye bye.